Okay, let's begin. I am Lanice Antoine Shelley, and I'll be your host through constructive, healing-based conversations designed to illuminate the adoptee, parents, and the adoption curious. We center the topics around community, mentorship, leadership, and healing, so you get a multi-dimensional view that is ultimately empowering. These are the voices who could not speak when they were young. Hey y'all, if you've seen me on Instagram, I'm in my summer glow phase and I am unapologetic about it. My hair is luscious. Fun fact, I didn't start properly treating and doing my own hair until I was a grown adult because like many Black adoptees, no one showed me how to do my own hair. And because I love you all so much, I'm going to share with you my hair secret. I'm always on the lookout for things you'd love and things that will enhance your well-being inside and out. We Unique Cosmetics sent me their Moisture Lock pomade and scalp and hair therapy oil from their Metamorphosis line, and it's so decadent, light, and nourishing, fam. This has become a hair routine staple. It has a soft lemongrass scent that people comment on when I walk by or when they're doing my hair because now I have boho locks. They also sent me a 15% discount link for you to try their products and hair tutorial service. And Unique Cosmetics is Black owned and operated by a mother and daughter duo dedicated to helping the adoptee community. Check out the link in the show notes. And this is for all ages, fam. So tell your friends. So come on, embark on a hair-loving journey with We Unique World. From interactive workshops to premium products, they're all about empowering you to embrace your unique hair journey. Because remember, all hair is good hair, especially when it's healthy. Hey there, how you doing? How is your heart? Things are good with me. I'm definitely tired, but that's hasn't changed for a while now. I'm sure you're tired of hearing me say that. But it is the quiet moments that help me. I love my solitude. I need time to decompress and to replenish. I'm definitely an introvert. I heard a podcaster say that she is her highest self when she is alone. That may be true for me. I definitely need space to recalibrate, So this time has been very valuable. Okay, our guest today is Astrid Castro. You've heard me talk about how much I love the phrase, the Adoptee Constellation. I first heard it from Astrid, who worked in the private and public sectors of various adoption organizations, such as the Oregon Post Adoption Resource Center, Holt International, Rocky Mountain Adoption Exchange, to name just a few. She is the creator of the Adoptee Mosaic, which is a platform for compassion-informed education, training, and resources to the Adoption Constellation community. This was such an illuminating conversation. I'm so excited to bring it to you today. Let's go.
Oh, goodness, I'm so excited I'm really excited for this. I have to say, you are in nearly 30 years of doing this work. You are the third adoptee who I've ever been interviewed by.
Really? Oh my God.
Yeah. And I'm excited to talk about that actually.
We have to talk about that. That is,
yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Right.
It's not really an empowered stance. That's the feel that I get from that, is that there aren't many adoptees in my position that are giving voice to this perspective. And that's exactly why I'm here.
Yes. Oh, I'm so thrilled.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, I just want to jump in. We have so much to talk about.
Great.
Not only the information that you sent me, but I have specific questions about Adoption Mosaic. And I just want to start us off with, I just love your vision to build bridges with adoption communities for forward-thinking dialogue on adoption-related topics while offering support and education to those who are learning what it means to be part of an adoption constellation. This adoption constellation, can you speak to that? I love that.
Yes. So I didn't coin the term. I would say as an organization, I've been using this term for a very long time. It was an individual in Canada who came up because we historically have talked about the adoption triad, right? And that being the triangle of the 3 points of the triangle being the people who are the most impacted by an adoption. And those points are birth or first parent, an adoptee, and the adoptive parents. And so that's what made up the adoption triad. And I had heard this concept of the adoption constellation, where it's when you really stop and think about who is impacted by an adoption, it is so much more than 3 points on a triangle, right? It is our extended family, it's communities of color, it's international communities, it is social workers, it's siblings who are not adopted, siblings who are adopted together, siblings who were separated as a result of adoption, the foster care system, foster parents. And so I just really felt like the adoption constellation made so much more sense in the way I thought about adoption, and really realizing that we can't have high level conversations unless we're talking about the constellation, unless we're bringing in our community, unless we're allowing those conversations to seep into other aspects of our life, because the act of being adopted, or the act of adopting, or placing your child for adoption, or having your child being taken away from you, you can't have a conversation if you're only stuck in that triad. So
I love that. Oh my God. Yeah, I want to use that now. That I think encapsulates everything. You're right, because it's not just a triad. It is a myriad of things. So what is the adoption mosaic? Because that in itself is so rich. What is Adoption Mosaic, and what led you to this work?
Yeah. So what originally led me to this work was just the personal, like so many of us, right? The personal experience of being an adopted person and walking through the world in a very different way than my peers and my counterparts. I was adopted along with my sister. So we had each other, my biological sister. We were placed together. However, we didn't, even between the two of us, we didn't have language. We didn't know how to talk to each other about, people would say to me all the time, oh, well, at least you had your sister. At least you had somebody else who you could talk to if things came up around race or adoption or birth family, first family kind of thing. And my sister and I, we laugh laugh and cry, I guess, the combination of we had each other, but we didn't have each other. We didn't, because children aren't automatically born with the language of adoption and talking about adoption unless we're modeled it, unless we're shown what it looks like to talk about it. And we didn't have it modeled to us. So she might as well have not been adopted along with me. Or I say that facetiously because, of course, she's, very important person to me. I'm very close to her. And however, when it comes to navigating being an adoptee and isolation, we were still, it was racial isolation, adoptee isolation. Even though we had each other, we didn't have each other in the context of support with each other.
That is exactly how it is with my sister. And I love how you phrase that, because she and I came from the same orphanage and we're not biological, but there's no other way to explain the dynamic. And because the conversation of adoption was not modeled to us, we can't even really discuss it to this day.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so, the isolation of that, I think, is where how Adoption Mosaic was really born. It was I was at the time when I created Adoption Mosaic, I was working at the Oregon Post Adoption Resource Center, which is a local organization that received federal dollars, state dollars that trickled down from federal dollars, that every state is given these dollars to offer some level of post-adoption support. Every state has it. Every state gets to determine on how they are going to use those dollars. The state of Oregon decided that they were going to use it by opening up a center and creating this center where families that had adopted through child welfare foster care were eligible. And so I had done an internship with them the summer before while I was finishing up university. And when I had finished my internship I graduated from school, from university, and then a position opened up, a family support specialist position. And I applied and I worked there for 5 years. And it was a really wonderful fit. Before, I was a non-trad, I think is what we called ourselves, non-trad student at university. And so I was of the older, it was a very small liberal arts traditional school, but I was 27 when I started and to get my undergraduate. And so I had done quite a bit. I had done about 10 years worth of work in the adoption industry, doing internships or working in various adoption agencies as either a volunteer or just a side job. And in doing that, I learned pretty quickly the work that I knew I was not able to do. And that was write home studies and place babies for adoption and be a part of that part of the adoption industry. That was too hard on several different levels. I could talk for days about that experience. But as a result of working at ORPARC, we were allowed to serve families that had adopted through the child welfare foster system. So the state of Oregon put a stipulation that families that had not adopted through the public sector foster care, child welfare, would not be eligible to receive ORPARC services. And so the result of that is I was out in the community doing these trainings. They were free to the community. Anybody could come along, but we only advertised or sent out the flyer to families that were eligible. But of course, word got around, and some families that were not eligible for our services but were welcome to attend the workshops started attending. And they started calling the organization, and we were not supposed to take those calls. And I was really fortunate that I had a supervisor at the time who's still a dear friend, Claudia Hutchinson. And she basically said, so if you want to take these calls on your own time during lunch, I know we have this amazing database. It's just sitting there. And if there are families that adopted internationally private or domestic private, that you could serve them, but we can't use your time for these families during work. So I started taking these calls and on my own time. So my lunch breaks and in the evenings, I was giving out my cell phone and just kind of, I don't know, bootlegging in some ways. And my supervisor, she knew I was doing it. And I think we found, because she, like me, just wanted to serve our community, right? And we had this, and we actually attempted to open up ORPARC services to all families, and the state put a kibosh on that and said, no, we're not going to do that. It would cost too much money and so forth. And my feeling is if we don't serve the private families, those private families will become clients of DHS right? Like these are families that regardless of how they adopted or how those children have come into their families, that if they're calling us, they need services, they need support. So I was doing that. There was 3 women, adopted parents, that had seen me over the years of working at ORPARC doing presentations. And they were families that had adopted privately, internationally privately, except for one. And I would just meet with them, for lunch or and so forth. And we started talking, and they said, you know what, we kind of want to start an organization that is eligible for all families. And so me and these 3 women, we started a nonprofit and started Adoption Mosaic. I was literally driving down the road, and I saw a mural of a mosaic on the wall. And I said, I feel like one of those, I feel like a piece of a mosaic. And then all of the spaces, and this is exactly as I'm driving, I was like, in all the spaces around me as the piece. Yeah, you could say broken. It's a broken piece that came from somewhere else, was taken from something else and brought into this big picture. And it's not until you step away, like when you're really close, you just see roughness, you see imperfection, you see all of these things, but then you step away and you look at the big picture of it, and then it all makes sense, right? And making sense of who I am has always felt that way. So I was like, oh, Adoption Mosaic, that sounds like a really cool name. So I came back to the group. We were in the kitchen table story, right? We were, the 4 of us were at the kitchen table, and I said, what do you guys think of this name? And we all were like, yes, this is great. So we ran so I left my job at ORPARC because this was all volunteer organization, and it was taking my time, enough of my time, that I left ORPARC and was a full-time employee of Adoption Mosaic. I left the board of Adoption Mosaic and then became the executive director. And we ran Adoption Mosaic for 10 years and served a lot of families and served a lot of individuals and adoptees. And we closed the doors about 4.5 years, well, almost 5 years ago. And we closed the doors because I was working 80 hours a week, getting paid for first 5 years of Adoption Mosaic. It was all volunteer. The second 5 years, I was paid minimum wage for 20 hours as the executive director and working 80 hours. And as the executive director of a nonprofit, I was doing all of the things that one has to do to keep a nonprofit alive and running. And I wasn't doing programs in the way that I wanted to do programs. I wasn't done doing programs. I wasn't. If the organization had been one in which I could just come in and just do programs, like the director of programs, that would have been perfect. But no, grassroots, really starts off that way, grassroots nonprofit. So, yeah, we closed Adoption Mosaic, and I knew that I was going to we all agreed I would retain the name, I would retain all the materials, and that I would be moving in the future to relaunching Adoption Mosaic as an LLC, where I didn't have to manage a board of directors. I wasn't chasing $500 grants that weren't really focused on our mission, which is what I found myself doing, right? A lot of my time went to fundraising, events, end of the year appeal, like all the things that all of the nonprofits are doing right now. Like watching that, it just makes me feel like, I am so grateful for you for doing this. And I am so grateful I am not doing that this year.
Yeah, I found you on Facebook, and I loved what you had to say about the mosaic aspect of adoption. From afar, it looks like a charitable deed. Everyone's happy. Look at this smiling family. And when you look up close, there are a lot of traumas and healing work that needs to be done on both sides. And you talked about possibly the element of brokenness, this broken piece. And it made me think of just a slight pivot to an extracted piece. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
that not necessarily was broken off of anything, but just has moved away from something.
Mm.
And I'm curious about just language around adoption and how we can just flip it or pivot slightly so it's less of a broken platform
Yeah.
that I feel that is so incessant and prominent in the adoption community. So you are on your own now, which is awesome.
Thank
Congratulations.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
This is a huge feat. What services do you give out to the community now? You're on Facebook. What else do you do?
Yeah. So right now we decided we were going to launch right before COVID. And we then, I had said, I'm going to wait until this blows over. And I was really fortunate to have a person in my life who said, no, 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 you're not going to wait. I don't know how long this is going to last, but you have been talking about wanting to do some online stuff. I'm really good at Zoom, and she's actually a Zoom specialist. Her name is Brooke, and she is out of Kentucky, and we met through an online training that I had attended, and she happened to be a birth mother, first mother, and an adoptee. And so she said, I love what you're doing. Tell me how I can help. And so she said, I'll help you by launching this online work that you were talking about doing in this class that we met at. So one of the services that we're offering right now is a monthly, it's called We the Experts, the Adoptee Speaker Series. And the Adoptee Speaker Series brings 4 adult adoptees who are informed of how and have deeply thought about how their adoption has affected their beingness, right? Where they are today and how their adoption has played out for them to be where they are. And I am a strong believer in putting processed adoptees or in folks who are or I don't think we're ever out of the fog, really, but folks who are on that journey. And so I offer this service at Adoption Mosaic where I interview 4 adult adoptees, and people can come and watch that and then participate by asking questions. So the adoptees there's the 4 of us that end up, or excuse me, there's 5 of us, including me. And then we introduce them. I ask them questions that I've sent that we've talked about ahead of time. And then we kind of flip it. And towards the end, we ask the audience 2 questions. Usually it's about 2 questions that the panelists are really curious to hear what the audience has to say. And this is not an adoptee exclusive space. This is a shared space. However, non-adoptees do have to sign a waiver. And the waiver is a waiver of understanding that this is not a space for your. If you're not adopted, this isn't a space for you to unmute yourself or to contribute. You get to be a fly on the wall, but this is an adoptee-centered space. So that has really taken a lot of my time and energy because, as you know, somebody who is doing podcasts and engaging our adoptee community, it's to do it in a way that is ethical, to do it in a way that is supportive, that is community building. You don't just slap it together and call somebody and say, "Do you want to be on my panel?" And then that's it. You do your homework and you get to know each other and you build community and so forth. So I do that. I run that. And then I also do adopt a parent trainings, and those are all they're all online. Each class that I do is 6 weeks long. It's a commitment. I should say 6 sessions. It's definitely a commitment. And those are the people that I really want to spend my time with. And as opposed to a 1 hour, 2 hour, I do 1 and 2 hour presentations for sure. But really a big part of that is to introduce myself to the community to the point where I hope you come and join us for the in-depth, for rolling up our sleeves, for doing the hard work that I believe we owe it to our kids to do. And so these are classes on I have tough conversations, how to have tough conversations with your kiddos, that is focused on adoption. So whether it's having to share with your child about their life before they were placed with you. What does that conversation look like? How do you have that conversation? How do you do what you and I didn't have? So if there are siblings, you're modeling language, you're modeling what this looks like. You're decentering your adoptee in your home. How do you decenter your adoptee where there is an environment around adoption in your home, and it doesn't always have to do with your child who is adopted. It can be about other things. Maybe it's about you. Maybe it's about why you decided to adopt. I do believe that us adoptees have the right to know the in-depth story of how we became a part of our family. So we have another 6-week class, and that is Path to Now. So how did you, as an adoptive parent, get to this place of deciding to adopt? You didn't just wake up one day and say, we can't have kids, let's adopt. Or
Hey, I want to share with you something that has changed my life. It's more like my therapist. Why is she so important? Well, because I want to win in this life. I want to break through the carousel of stories I've compiled that hold me back, that keep me from expanding into my full potentiality. Stories of unworthiness, not enoughness, and even stories of questioning why I am here. I also want to stop dumping my unsorted feelings on the people around me and reacting with the same behavioral patterns that keep me stuck. Conversations with my therapist have made me more confident, clearer in my intention, and more centered in my spirit. That is why I am elated that we are sponsored by BetterHelp, where you can, from wherever you happen to be right now, match with a therapist tailored to your exact needs. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. Someone who you can text at any time and schedule online for either a chat, Zoom, or phone call. And if it turns out that your therapist isn't the right fit, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional cost. Visit the link in the show notes, betterhelp.com, when they were young, to get 10% off the first month. You need to click the link in the show notes in order to get the 10% discount. I want to see you win, beloved. Let's do it together. Visit the link, betterhelp.com, when they were young.
the other myriad of reasons why adoptive parents adopt. No, there was a process. There was contemplation. There, you brought in your community. Who did you talk to? Who did you process with? What was the decisions that come with this young person that you brought into your life? And it's kind of building our legacy, right? How do we feel like we are a legacy to our adoptive family if we're not given the story, the legacy story of how we became a part of our family, right?
That's exactly right. And I push that as well, just the history of the adoptee. We are not acknowledging these histories enough because I was adopted when I was 4, same as yourself, right?
Yes.
You were adopted from Colombia at 4 years old. Yep. And so at 4 years old, I already have somewhat mastered language and have a personality. I have materialized in such a way that I have bonded with people and things. And then you strip that away and say, no. this is your new family, this is your new language, this is the food that you will eat. And furthermore, you will be grateful for it. And so I love what you're saying about all of that, especially the decentering of the adoption too. That is such powerful language. And these programs just, I'm excited about them. I'm like, how do I get into this?
Yes.
Oh my God, you know?
I would love to have. So one of the tough conversations is one where I bring in, it's 6 weeks long. If you're an adoptee who's interested in the work that I'm doing, interested in seeing how I present and how I talk to families, if you're interested in doing this work in the future, or you just want to give me a call when you're doing this. I enjoy this work, but it's not something that I'm looking to do in the future for whatever reason. That if you're somebody who wants to contribute to the conversation and wants to be in community with adoptive parents who have signed up to be in community with adoptees. And it's kind of like that marriage of bringing our adult to adult brains together and having some intense and powerful conversations and dialogue around, this would have been helpful, or here, and then the healing power of getting to see an adoptive parent to do things differently than the way our parents did it is, I think the healing power of that is one of the most wonderful outcomes that comes as a result of doing these workshops alongside my adoptee community. So it's also modeling to our adult adoptee community. That's the 4 adoptees that I bring in to run these groups with me. We do debrief afterwards, like, so how was that for you to hear so-and-so say so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. And let's process that. And we should have space. We should be building community amongst adoptee to adoptee to be able to have space to say, this is how this landed. So all of that to say, I would love to have you join a 6-week group if that's something that you're interested in. The third workshop that I do, which we have not launched in 2021, which might sound a little counterintuitive to the state of the world right now, I have held back from doing my 6-week transracial adoptive parent workshop. And I have done this for years. Here in the Portland area and here in Oregon, I think that there are some people who think that that's all I do, is that I specialize in transracial adoption and all I do is presentations on transracial adoption, which is not true. However, I'm one of the few, for sure, if not the only, who does it locally. And so I have done this in person across the country. And the in-person for me is, I haven't figured out how I want to create a curriculum that is powerful, that is connecting, that is community building, that where we roll our sleeves up and talk about race for 6 weeks. And one of the things that is, I believe, really different in the workshops that we offer is we are making space for people to actually talk. So there's, 10 to 15, max 20 people who attend these workshops. We cut it off. And this is, I'm going to give you a contemplation, then you're going to go into a breakout room and you're going to practice. Because I can talk to you until the cows come home. I can talk to you, you can read articles. I can throw slides up there with a ton of words on it. And I could talk about transracial adoption 16 hours straight, nonstop. And however, that is really easy to find. What's not easy to find is, where do I get to practice and put all of this theory into practice? I need to hear myself say it out loud. I need to hear other white parents saying it out loud. And then I need to get feedback from my BIPOC community, my adoptee BIPOC community, who says, okay, this was a little prickly, or this is how this landed for me, or wow, think about this concept. So this workshop that I'm going to be launching in 2021 on transracial adoption is going to be for 6 weeks. We're going to be rolling our sleeves up, breakout rooms, conversations, dialogue, and community building. And you're going to walk away feeling like, wow, this is my community. So I'm excited.
Wow. That's incredible. And you have it all just like available on your Facebook page, correct? Like, where can people find you to get all of this information? Your website, Facebook page. Are you on other social medias?
Yeah, so Instagram also. Right now, our Instagram pretty much consists mostly of the We the Experts Adoptee Speaker Series. So if you wanted to go onto our Instagram Adoption Mosaic page, that you would see the lineup of all of the adoptees who have been panelists for the We the Experts. And so it's really focused on that. This 2021, it's going to have more of the classes and the other things as well. Our website is it's up, it's running, and it's not a complete reflection of these workshops quite yet. Right now, we're focusing on Facebook and Instagram is really where we do most of our announcing and marketing.
Okay. Well, you introduced me to Adoption One, and I'm still diving deep into that podcast. It sounds awesome. How was that interview for you? Because it was quite illuminating.
Yes. So it's Adoptees On, and it is an adoptee in Canada. She started it, and she's been doing it for years. And Haley is her name. She's wonderful. And she was the first, I was telling you earlier before we started, that she is the first adoptee who ever has interviewed me. I've been interviewed and have done podcasts and various other things, but they've all been either people who are not members of the Adoption Constellation and the Oregonian article and some other things, or adoptive parents or adoption agencies. And I had, until this last year, I had never been interviewed by an adoptee to an adoptee. And so this is my third experience. And I have to tell you, it's different. It's really different. And
how so? How is it different?
I think that for me, it is the notion that we are growing, that our voices there's finally a space, or we're demanding the space, or we're asking for the space. It's a combination of things, that in numbers we're really powerful. And I think that we're starting to find each other on a larger scale. And so we're starting to empower each other in these ways that makes my heart just so happy. I feel like the first half of my career, the first 20 years, was somewhat in isolation. I had some adoptee mentors that are still in my life that I look up to, that that have modeled to me what it means to be an adoptee and working in the industry, or working towards creating space for dialogue and conversations, but not locally. And so I have felt really isolated in that world. And so it just feels really wonderful to have other adoptees who are doing great work. I want to uplift them. I want to tell the world about them. It's really exciting. And like with anything, there's this comfortability that it's one adoptee to another. There's, as we all know, there's things that I don't have to explain, or we don't have to go over, because we have this baseline understanding. And then the deeper you go into that, you're like, oh, I was adopted at 4.5 too. And I came from an orphanage too. And and these things where it's like, oh my gosh, each one of those little nuggets could take us into a really deep conversation.
Oh, most definitely. And it's monumental, right? Because we're always in relationships. We're always looking for commonalities. And
Mhm.
the fact that we were both adopted from other countries is huge. And then you go even deeper from an orphanage at 4 years old. And then we have white parents. All of these things are just Goliathian, right? And
Right.
it's rare that you have huge things in common with strangers. And so it's exciting to run into one another because we're like, what? Where have you been all my life?
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
and I've been building community here in Portland and in Colorado. I would say those were my two places that I focused on building my adoptee community, and basically just offering potlucks and come over to my house and let's when I was running Adoption Mosaic nonprofit, when it was a nonprofit, there was I was building community by saying I could really use some help with this, and there was adoptees who were volunteering and getting involved, and so I guess it's the adoptee professional piece that felt isolating. I've never felt isolated as far as being an adoptee, and I can say that because I started this work when I was 18, and when I was 18, I was on my first panel, and then I started meeting other adoptees really early into my career, and my sister as well. I mean, she's definitely a resource now, but around race and adoption stuff, she wasn't a resource as a child.
You are leagues ahead of me because I just started this exploration into the adoption community this year. And
Oh,
yeah, I'm fairly new into just hanging out with other adoptees on this level. I
oh,
had
wow.
camps when I was, I don't know, 13 or so in Minnesota, but we never really put any emphasis on being in the community, being
Mm.
around like families. And so this is the year for that, and it's just exploded for me, which has been awesome. Like I'm loving it. I'm artistically inspired by it. I am emotionally grounded by it. Like it's really an exciting time. But one last question for you, a question that I ask all of my guests is, where in your life do you think you can apply courage?
Where in my life do I think that I can apply courage? Hmm. Uh, that's a really great question. Uh, so for me personally, I feel that it's a really good question because I'm not sure. I don't believe that it's courage, even though people say to me all the time, "Oh, you're so courageous for putting your story out there, or for building Adoption Mosaic and saying the difference between me and the guy next door in building community is just that I'm doing it. I'm like I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just doing it and it's not resilience, it's not courage, it's a necessity. So when I function from a space of necessity, that it is clear to me that we are lacking in this way in our community, and that nobody deserves or should have to experience the isolation that we experienced, right? And so I think that other people apply courage to me in ways where I don't see myself as courageous. And in fact, when I think about things that I have done, I'm not really answering your question. I'm being a very bad.
No, I love that answer. I think that however it comes up for you is exactly right. And that you morphed it into a necessity is something I haven't heard before. And I think it's brilliant, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah. Well, and when I think about if it was courage, if I had to overcome courage in order to do this work, how much more challenging that would be for me. I think because for me, I wake up in the morning and it's it's not courageous for me to do this work. It's, like I said, it's the necessity piece. And so we just have to do this. It's a no-brainer, right? But if it was something that was scary or hard for me, that would be a completely different experience. And I think that what I'm seeing is that there's a lot of adoptees who are courageous and who are sharing their story online. I don't feel the need to share my story as much as I feel the need to create space for others to share their story. I've had my time, right? I've had my time to share my story. The healing is connecting with people like you. The healing is uplifting my community. That is the space that I exist in. And so it's kind of like COVID is a great example where I don't struggle with depression. I don't struggle with anxiety. I don't struggle with loneliness. I'm alone 50% of my time, me and my dog, and there's not an ounce of me that feels alone. I'm physically alone, but mentally I'm not. And I have community. I know I'm in community. And so when people say, how are you doing with COVID? Like, I'm doing really well. I'm doing really well. And I have extra energy that if you're not, like, call me or let's Zoom or I have that extra energy to exude out and you're not draining me. It's not a hardship for me. So there's not any courage for me to wake up every morning and make it through COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's how I feel too. I think you acknowledge this as well, is that there are a lot of adoptees that for them telling their stories, they do have to summon up a lot of courage, whether it be because they are fearful of their parents' reactions to these stories, or they haven't quite reckoned with how they feel about their histories. Those things really create some contention within themselves about what it is that they're doing, even though they feel compelled to tell these stories, compelled to engage. And so as I move through this work myself and engage with people like yourself and observe what's happening in the Facebook groups that can get wild, because there is so much trauma, there is so much anger, and a lot of that ire is thrown at these parents. And I've just been listening and observing and trying to, as yourself, hold space for people, because I think that is what they're missing more than anything.
And I love the way that you said that, holding space for people. I used to say I hold safe space for people. And then somebody schooled me and said, Astrid, have you ever thought about safety for you might be very different than how I define safety. And that you might be creating a space that is safe for you to sit in, but that doesn't mean that it's a safe space for others. And so creating space, right, where I hold this space that I am wanting to create invitation, to create a space where we can agree to disagree. These are the things that when I think about safe space, those are the things that I strive for. We can agree to disagree. We can hear hard things from each other. We can hold space for silence, for caring for one another, for empathy, for all of these things. And I don't think that there's a lot of space to practice that and to do that where we're not feeling judged for whatever reason. And so that's one of the things that I really strive for with my trainings and my workshops and, well, I guess everything that I do, is creating space for that.
Here are my reflections. Adoptees are creating spaces and empowering each other so that we no longer feel isolated. There are more adoptees leading and generating content that will help to reform, educate, and support the adoption community from the adoptee perspective. And this is a wonderful thing, my friends. You can find healing in connecting with one another and locking into this beautiful constellation. Thank you, Astrid. You gave so many quotable phrases. I truly had to take notes. Find Astrid on social media and connect with her and her work. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you again for that review that you just wrote on iTunes. Seriously, though, I so appreciate all the reviews that are being written, and it makes all of the difference. So, thank you. Another beautiful episode. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to my guest today. If you liked this episode, the best way to support me and this work is to write an iTunes review, a 5-star review. This helps us reach the top of searches and helps more people to find us. And if you personally want to connect, please reach out on Instagram or Facebook. And I have some great resource material on my website at laniceantoineshelley.com. So go on over there too. Until next we meet, go gently and have courage, my love.